So today's video is going to be something a little different, as it's going to be advice for land buyers looking to find a site which might be suitable for development, but also it's going to be a combined video for existing landowners who are looking to see if their site might be suitable for development purposes. In the video, we're going to be offering a few tips on how to actually find a plot of land. And also, we're going to be talking about finding out if the plot of land is in an adopted settlement boundary, where development should be possible. And then lastly, we'll also discuss checking the constraints of a site. That shall cover aspects such as potential flood zone risks, if there are nearby listed buildings, and policy matters such as that. Additionally, we shall be discussing what to explore to see if a site looks to be a suitable site for housing. To start with, in helping buyers understand how to try and look for a development plot, this can be done relatively quickly and straightforwardly through just using the Google Maps satellite view feature. I'm actually using my specialist land software, but it's a similar kind of layout to that of Google Maps. The only slight difference, I've got various additional policy features such as the title boundary layout. But this will just help us for the purpose of this video. Knowing where to start in finding a plot of land is obviously quite a challenge to overcome. You want to be ideally looking for a plot of land which is going to be keeping the line of build for an existing residential housing area. So, if we look here, we've got an established row of residential properties on this side of the road. Also, we can see on the other side of the road there's lots of other residential housing. Thus, probably a site such as this one here is where we could perhaps look to keep the existing build line of these houses. So probably this parcel of land here, for example, would probably be a good starting point. If we also look at some other ideas, we can explore some more backland sites, such as this site here. Here we can see we've got an existing residential community there, and obviously we've got a proper adopted highway that are going to these properties. So this site probably looks quite an interesting site. Click Street View, and here we can see the adopted highway, which just goes to these existing properties there. And as we can see, it's going to be this parcel of land at the back there. And really, there's not a great deal of constraint visibly, which would stop us just having a new highway access directly onto this site from this existing roadway. This site certainly looks a viable site for sure to start with there. Now, for some other ideas, if we just scroll around this area, again, if we just used the same theory that I used formerly for this site just here, we've got a row of existing residential properties on this side of the road. And there we can see, again, we've got quite a residential feel there. So one might assume that this site here, if we was to keep the similar kind of build line of these houses, this site would be another idea to consider. And you can see on the other side of the road, it actually looks like they've already split the titles for this parcel of land there. So one would imagine that's probably already perhaps in the planning process, or certainly the owners of this site think that could well be a site which one could develop housing on. Now, another idea as well is to consider plots of land where maybe there's one large property and perhaps underutilized side parcels of land, which also form part of an overall property. So we can actually see that there's 3 parcels of land here. But one would imagine these are perhaps also associated with this site. So undoubtedly, if these areas are also within the adopted settlement boundary, certainly those look ripe for housing. Then finally, if we also look at this site here, it looks like we've got perhaps just one small house on this property and a range of outbuildings and different structures there. But this site here is clearly underutilized and certainly prime for a small housing development on this parcel here. For the next key aspect of identifying whether a plot of land is suitable for potential development, we want to check the adopted settlement boundary for all these plots of land. So we can check that here. If we just Google for the online mapping tool for whichever district council that you're identifying, and here it would just click this link, and then all we would need to do is type in the postcode for a nearby property. This will then give us all of these features here on the map feature, and we would click this one here, settlement boundaries. And if we just use one of the examples that we were looking at for this parcel of land off of Woodlands, so that was this part here, as we can see, that is located within the adopted settlement boundary for this location. And similarly, if we just go back to the other sites that we were considering for potential for development. So we had this site here, which was keeping the build line of those houses and also had all of these housing opposite as well. As we can see there, this plot of land is also within the adopted settlement boundary. However, as you will see, that land segment only effectively kept a similar build line to all of the other housing. It doesn't include this bigger parcel of land to the back and to the side there, so that's worth remembering as well. Now, if we look at another piece of the land that might have potential, that was this site here. Again, if we were to try and keep the existing build line of these properties there, and also we'd be fronting these houses there, one might expect that this site should be also within the adopted settlement boundary. However, if we look here, that was the row of houses that we were looking at to keep this build line. As you can see, the settlement boundary has actually gone around that plot of land there, and then continued with the end plots that we also identified. Thus, just because one would assume the settlement boundary would just keep that straight line there, it doesn't always pan out as expected. So it's just worth being mindful of that. Now, just briefly, the final site that we thought might have opportunity was this big property here with underutilized garden plots there. And also, we had this property there with the development potential there as well, as we can see there on the adopted settlement boundary. All of that site has scope for future housing development. Finally, if we want to check site constraints and the potential suitability of a site, this is obviously a key consideration. There's clearly a long list of things that have to be met to allow development to take place. But what we can make use of again on this online map portal is we can see some of these site constraints that are shown here. This includes things like a conservation area, nature reserves, nearby listed buildings, flood zone risk and woodland areas. Also, we can see areas of natural beauty. So here we can see just quickly, this site is just about there. So we can see it's located within the settlement boundary. Also, we are within an area of natural beauty. Additionally, we can see just here, this property there is a listed building. So if we go back to my land software, it's this property right here. I can actually look for constraints there. And then if I just click this property here, as you can see on my land software, that shows that this property here is a Grade 2 listed building, and we're located within the area of natural beauty. My software also has some additional features which aren't actually shown on the District Council online mapping tool, so one must be mindful of that. For example, if we click here, we can see there's a public right-of-way to the back of this site that thankfully won't actually impact this site. And we can also look for other matters such as surface water flooding. So as you can see here, Woodlands actually has a bit of an issue with recorded surface water flooding, as does this area here of the site. So most likely, if you were to get planning approval for this site, you would have to get some kind of a flood risk assessment report. Just as a quick spoiler alert, to quickly show you, just on my software, as you can see here, this site, which I was actually aware of, already has outline planning application approval for 24 units. And I believe development has actually started on that site now. This site example was just to give you an indication of the type of thing to look out for. And just so you can see this site here that we also talked about, it doesn't look as though they've made any planning applications to do anything with that site. They could have, of course, done a pre-app and sought out further advice that way. And if we just go over to these other plots of land there, you can see they've already had granted a planning application for 7 units. And again, if we go to this site here, you can actually see there is also some background history on planning for that site. Similarly here, you can see it looks like they've clearly been making some planning applications as well. I shall do a future video on planning applications for everyone to take a look at. Just a quick side note as well, I've already done a video on how to find out the owner of a plot of land or a property if you're looking to contact those individuals directly. I'll leave a link to that video in the description. So that concludes today's video. a bit longer than anticipated, but hopefully that will give some useful ideas to potential land buyers. But similarly for existing landowners, it will just give you some more ideas on the likelihood and suitability that your land might have for future development purposes. If you'd like any more details on any of the content within the video, please get in touch. All of our contact details are listed on screen now, and thank you for watching.